people is this. If they're having relationship problems and difficulties, instead of saying, I have my relationship problems and difficulties because my partner doesn't do this or that or this or that, and this happens and that happens, my partner does this and that. Instead of doing all of that, forget all that for a moment and ask yourself, what would my love of myself motivate me to do for myself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I could, maybe, because you've outlined two aspects of that, and I have some notes here that you've written as well, and perhaps
Sure.
if I can just read out a couple of
Sure.
sentences. So you've said the first thing is not to have a betrayal of yourself if you loved yourself. And
Yes.
it's something you've written here, which is very beautiful. In a relationship, there are two people that would love you completely.
Yes.
Yourself and your partner.
Yes.
If you love yourself, you will not be able to take an action that results in the betrayal of your deepest feelings.
Exactly.
So that's the first aspect.
Yeah.
And then the second one, that of taking self-responsibility, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And you've written here, if I expect other people to do for me what I am able to do for myself, but avoid that for any reason, that I'm avoiding something I can do for myself, then I'm not loving to either myself or the other person.
Yes.
If I'm unable to do something for myself and yet wish it to happen, then I cannot expect that anyone else do it for me. What others do for me is a gift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the important part of that too, is that even if I'm unable to do it for myself, I can't expect you to do it for me. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
So, we can get real,
Yeah.
We can get real blunt with a lot of our examples here. But,
Yes.
And probably what we need to do is have asked the question about the examples, and then we can start we can start helping people through their question about examples.
Yep.
How to actually see it in operation in practical areas of their life.
All right, so should we move on to the next question?
Yep.
Okay.
Good.
Could you give some practical examples of what would my love for myself motivate me to do for myself?
Right. So supplementary question number 1 is, what would my love for myself motivate me to do for myself? There's 2 parts to that question, as we covered in another question. Mm-hmm. 2 parts, as a summary, is first part, I would never betray myself. I would never betray my spiritual, emotional, physical and sexual
feelings
or desires in order to do anything for somebody else. I would never betray myself. The second part of the statement means that I would always take full responsibility for myself in every aspect of my life, sexual, emotional, physical and spiritual. I would take full responsibility for myself. So if we now put all this together and come up with some practical examples, that would be great in terms of understanding how this works in a practical environment.
Okay, so let's talk about something that's really maybe a hotter topic for people, or something that we hear a lot about, and that is, as the relationship progresses, the woman feels less sexually interested than the man, and the man wants sex and the woman doesn't want sex.
Yes.
So if I'm the woman, how do I approach that situation?
If you're the woman.
Yes.
In terms of?
Well, for example, if I'm the woman and I feel I don't want to have sex. Now, the first part of your answer to the supplementary question was, I shouldn't betray that feeling. So I shouldn't have sex when I don't want to have sex.
Exactly.
But the second part of the question is, am I taking responsibility for everything that's inside of me, and am I loving the way God would love?
And the answer is no.
No.
If you're denying sex to your partner, you aren't taking full responsibility. So the answer is no. So the question then becomes, what would the woman do if she saw this problem within herself? She would want to change it. She would want to do something about it. She would want to work through the reasons why she feels the way she feels.
Because she would say, wouldn't she, I want to love in the way God loves, and God created me with
as a sexual
desire for my mate.
Yep.
And if it's not existing,
not there, there's a reason.
There's a reason. Either I want something, I want a betrayal from my partner, I want them to do something for me that I'm not willing to do for them, or a codependent situation.
Yes.
Or that I have an issue around my sexuality.
Yes.
Yeah.
And usually for such a woman, there'd be a lot of rage that she has, probably. Passive-aggressive rage, I suggest. Passive-aggressive in the sense that a withdrawal of something is usually the passive road that we take in order to express our rage. So she's obviously got some rage within her about sexuality. So, and that exists whether her partner has any problem or not, to be frank. So she needs to address that particular issue. Now, if she feels that she can't have sex with her partner because she doesn't love him anymore, then she needs to honour that feeling. Say, look, I don't love you anymore, and I can't have sex with you because I don't love you anymore. Now, of course, there's a high likelihood the relationship would break up under those circumstances, and that's what she's probably avoiding because she wants the security of financial security or other forms of security, even maybe wants the affection of her husband without having to give anything to him. And these are all unloving things that she's asking of her husband as a result. So if she was truly taking responsibility, she would first ask herself, she would say to herself, well, okay, why am I withholding sex? Why am I... Now, I'm not suggesting she needs to give her husband sex when she doesn't feel like doing it, because that would be a betrayal of herself.
Yes.
But I'm also stating that she now needs to look at the reason why, she needs to take responsibility and look at the emotional reason why she's doing it and actually address it from God's perspective. That's what most people don't do.
Yeah.
So they do the first, but they don't do the second.
Yeah.
They don't take the full responsibility part.
Or they betray and then don't.
And then don't do it. Yeah, usually they do one or the other. Yeah. They don't do both. When it comes to, what would my love of myself motivate me to do for myself? Usually I'll either do one thing or the other thing, but I won't consider both things at the same time. Yeah. When I say both things, one thing is I say, no, I can't betray myself anymore, so I'm not going to, in this example we've given, have sex with my husband anymore, right? But then refuse completely to take personal responsibility for the fact that God created you as a sexual being. You're shutting down all of your sexual desires. You're living with a person you don't desire to have sex with, and there's a heap of reasons why that you're now avoiding. Yeah. And if you had true self-responsibility, you wouldn't avoid them.
Whether you were with a partner or not.
Exactly.
Actually.
Whether you're with a partner or not, you wouldn't avoid them.
Yeah.
You would still want to address and work through the issues. And what I see a lot of people doing is staying in the relationship under those circumstances, refusing to work through the personal issues that cause it to happen, while at the same time projecting at their partner that they've got to care for them financially, they've got to care for them physically, they've got to have all of these nice emotions towards them, while at the same time there's this rage within them in a passive-aggressive manner projected at the relationship. Now, of course, such a relationship's never going to work.
Yeah.
So you can't expect such a relationship to work when you're not doing both of these things that are involved in love of self. Yeah. You have to do both if the relationship is going to survive. You've got to do both. If you expect that you're going to be able to focus on the betrayal of yourself and not focus on taking self-responsibility, then you're not going to have any decent relationships at all.
And you're not actually fully complying with the first question of love of self, are you?
No, not at all.
You're saying, I can't betray myself, that's loving myself, but actually you're not fully loving yourself because
you're not doing the second thing, which is take personal responsibility for the fact that God created you with sexual organs, God created you with sexual desire. You don't have any in the situation you're in, and there's got to be a reason.
Yeah.
And take responsibility for the fact that you need to address the reason. There might be spiritual, emotional, physical and sexual reasons why you have this particular issue. And if you truly loved yourself, not your partner, yourself, if you truly loved yourself, you would be fully committed to dealing with it. You wouldn't be spending time avoiding it. You wouldn't be going around talking to your girlfriends saying how bad it is and trying to diffuse the issue from yourself. You'd be focused on, this is a problem for me. I've got a problem here. I need to work through the issues. Now, is it that I don't love my husband? Or is it that half the things he does make me angry all the time and I'm just angry with him most of the time? This is my way of passively, aggressively controlling him? Yeah. Or is it that you want control over somebody else, so you want somebody to love you but without loving in return? What are your underlying motivations? You need to work it out because you're not loving the way God loves. Yeah. If you ask yourself the first question, you're not loving the way God loves. The second question is, do I really have a desire to love the way God's love? If you're not taking personal responsibility for your life, emotions, sexual feelings, physical needs and spiritual needs, if you're not taking personal responsibility for any of those things, any one of those things, you are not loving the way God loves. And if you refuse to take responsibility for them, you refuse to change it, you also have no desire to love the way God loves either.
Yeah.
You're proving to both yourself and your partner that you don't really have a desire to love the way God loves.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good example of what we might do in those situations.
All right, well, we have another example.
Sure.
What about cleaning up around myself in the house?
How about we go back to the first example?
Oh, and do it from the
and
other
do
side?
it from the male's
Yes,
perspective.
Let's do that. Now, I meant to say that and I forgot.
Yeah,
Yep.
how about we do that?
Yes. Yep.
So if I'm the man in the relationship and my wife is withholding sex for whatever reason, what would I do if I loved myself? Right? Now, if I loved myself, I wouldn't betray myself. In other words, I wouldn't try shutting down my own desire for my wife. I would, just in order to avoid crying or some emotional pain. I wouldn't try to avoid sexual interactions with her or any of those kind of things.
So, and by that, let's clarify that. You're not forcing yourself upon your wife, but you're expressing your desire for her.
Exactly. I would
and
say to her,
yourself
I want to have
feel...
sex with you, you know, I love you and I desire you, you're beautiful and you know, I want to pleasure you and all those kind of things. So, you know, you would obviously still express all of those things if you didn't betray yourself. However, you wouldn't have sex with your wife because you know that having sex with her would force her into betraying herself.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have sex with her. But then what do you do about your physical desire for sexual relations?
Yeah.
Well, of course, you've got to take some personal responsibility for that. So it looks like that masturbation and other forms of taking responsibility for that are going to have to increase. Now, you wouldn't use tools to do such things. When I say tools, you wouldn't use things like pornography to take sexual responsibility. In other words, you wouldn't use pornography to heighten your sexual desire and then have a release if you were taking full responsibility for yourself, because that would be using another woman, a person who's obviously a willing accomplice, but it doesn't matter. From God's perspective, it's not a way of loving yourself either.
Yeah.
So what you would need to do is consider how your sex life is going to look if you're alone but still desiring your partner, the other half of yourself. You would not force her into having sex with you. You wouldn't manipulate her, coerce her into having sex with you. But then you also wouldn't stop fulfilling your own sexual desires, even if she got angry with you about that.
Yeah.
And what I see a lot of women doing is not giving their partner any of their sexual needs, or a few, you know, most of their sexual needs are not met, and yet at the same time demanding their partner doesn't do anything about that for their own sexual pleasure.
Yeah.
And that's unloving to actually have that expectation. So from both sides, there's going to be things they're going to need to work through. Now, if the guy feels angry that his partner is not, doesn't want sex with him, then I suggest if he was taking personal responsibility for his emotions, he would work through the reason why he feels so angry about that. And that would include things working through his sadness about not being desired, his sadness about not having the sexual approval of his partner, and a number of other things. So, you know, he would take responsibility for dealing with those emotions if he truly loved himself.
Yeah, great. So I just want to ask a few clarifiers then on the man's end. So obviously if he has a sexual desire for his wife and she doesn't have any desire for him, he's not expecting her. If he loved himself, he wouldn't betray his feelings, so he wouldn't stop having them.
Yep.
But he would also take responsibility for whatever that brings up in him. So he might be sad or angry, as you said, and he would recognise that if I loved in the way God loves, I wouldn't have this feeling.
I wouldn't be sad or angry.
Right. But I also wouldn't have a desire for another woman.
Exactly.
So if I did...
Or I wouldn't start projecting my sexual desires on other women if
Yeah.
I truly loved my partner.
Yeah.
Because I'd only want to have sex with my partner.
Yeah.
If I truly loved her, I'd be focused on her. I wouldn't be focused on anyone else.
Yes. Okay, and then there comes
And by the way,
question.
if that wasn't happening, then I have emotional issues of anger to work through myself. There's a lot of men respond in that way because their wife or partner is not giving them sexual approval or sexual attention. They then go and seek sexual attention or approval from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that's all that's avoiding is their own neediness for sexual attention and approval.
So that's not taking self-responsibility.
No, not at all.
Okay, then finally, is there a point in a relationship where love of self, either the man or woman's, or the might be same-sex partnership, but if one party is not interested in having a sexual relationship
with the other,
and the other one is, for a long period of time, is there a point where the love of self of the individual who does and who's continually rebuffed, or is there a point where it's loving to not be in that relationship?
Well, see, now you're getting on to questions associated with what does the love of my partner,
Am I? Sorry.
what would the love of my partner's